The 2025 March Madness bracket is in. I'm Autumn Johnson, and I'm going to take you through region by region, me filling out the bracket, possible upsets, potential rematches, and players to watch throughout the course of this March Madness bracket. So let's go ahead and break down the first round in Spokane 1. UCLA, Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Baylor, Florida State, LSU, Harvard, and NC State moving forward to the second round. Yes, I have Harvard moving to the second round with a possible upset alert, taking down Michigan State. They've already beaten 3 Power 4 schools this season, so I think they can get the best of the Spartans with Harmony Turner leading the charge. She just came off of a 44-point game to take her team to the Ivy League championship game and win it all. I think they can get it done here in March. Anything can happen. UCLA, Ole Miss, LSU, and NC State moving on to the Sweet 16. We could see a very interesting matchup between LSU and NC State. The guard play, the pace, I think Aneesah Morrow is going to be the X factor, but we have to watch out for injuries in this matchup. Isaiah James, making sure she's healthy, Flau'jae Johnson, and also Aneesah Morrow. UCLA, LSU could be a rematch of last year's Sweet 16. We'll see who moves on to the Final Four. Moving on to Birmingham 2, South Carolina, Indiana, a rematch of last year's Sweet 16. Alabama, Norfolk State, yes, a possible upset alert, taking down Maryland. We saw Norfolk State take down 2 SEC schools, so I think they have it in them, paced by Diamond Johnson and Kiera Willer. They're a dynamic duo, and they're a fun team to watch. Even on defense, they provide a staunch defense and even better offense. West Virginia, North Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Duke. And for the Sweet 16, some familiarity when we look at South Carolina and Alabama, 2 SEC schools facing off, North Carolina and Duke as well in the ACC. I have South Carolina, Duke facing off. However, we just saw this matchup earlier this year. South Carolina got the best of this matchup, and we know the Gamecocks love Birmingham. I think they can get the job done. We'll see who I have in the Final Four. As far as Birmingham 3, Texas, Creighton, Tennessee, Ohio State, which I'm circling on my calendar if we get this game because the press and also the pace of play between these two teams are very similar. Michigan, Notre Dame, Louisville, and TCU. If we get Louisville and TCU, we can have an interesting storyline of Hailey Van Lith facing off her former team. Texas versus Tennessee, a rematch in the SEC that went down to the wire and was decided by single digits. Notre Dame and TCU was a matchup that we got earlier this season in the Bahamas. I think Notre Dame shakes it off and moves on to the Elite 8 to meet up with Texas, which is another rematch that we saw earlier this year that went down to overtime. Now moving on to Spokane 4. We have Southern California, Mississippi State, K-State, and Kentucky, Iowa, Oklahoma, South Dakota State, and UConn. Moving on to the Sweet 16, Southern California and Kentucky, Oklahoma, and UConn. Now, when we look at the Elite 8, it could get interesting because we have Southern California and UConn facing off. That means Juju Watkins and Paige Bueckers. And guess what? We just saw this matchup possibly 3 times. We saw it last year in the Elite 8. We saw it in December. And that game was decided by 2 points with the Trojans getting the edge in stores. But I think when we look at this matchup, in the history that UConn has, Paige Bueckers has been able to take her team to the Final Four and championship stage almost every year, except for the year she didn't play. That was the only time the Huskies didn't experience a Final Four. I think she's the X factor, but also Azzi Fudd, who only played 8 minutes in that game in December. When you look at the head-to-head and the duos clashing against each other with Juju Watkins and Kiki Iriafen taking on Paige Bueckers and Sarah Strong. Now let's talk the Final Four. UCLA taking on UConn, and UCLA moving on to the championship stage, paced by 6'7" Lauren Betts. Sarah Strong will have that defensive assignment. South Carolina taking on Notre Dame. This was a blockbuster matchup that we saw in Paris last year that introduced us to Mylasia Fulwiley and Hannah Hidalgo. I think South Carolina will get the best of this matchup. And in this game, UCLA, South Carolina in the championship game, I'm going with South Carolina, the defending national champs. They know what it takes to get to this stage. And this could be a possible rematch that we saw back in November when this team was trying to navigate how to navigate life without Camila Cardoso. I think they've done that with Sanaya Fagan having a breakout year, and also Chloe Kitts, the MOP in the SEC, has been the deciding factor and X factor for this team. She's come out strong with this front court, and they have guard play to match it. South Carolina, that is my champion. Overall, I'm signing it, I'm stamping it, and we will see what happens in March.